And we used to go up there and go camping. We were too poor to do anything else, but we three boys, all about the same age, we'd go up there, we'd go camping. It was, we didn't know it, but that turned into a very valuable piece of land just after it was sold. Some local people came and approached our parents, told them that they could sell it. And after they moved to Florida, and they said, well, I can't use it up down in Florida, so they were able to buy it on the cheap. But we used to go camping up there a whole lot in the summertime.
Wait, when did, or where did, is this when you lived in Washington, D.C.?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we would take a lawnmower and we'd go around and cut people's grass and make a few dollars, get out and buy some groceries, and then we'd go camping for a week in pup tents. We had fun. We had fun. It was nice. That's the reason that we boys were campers from way back. This was in the 30s.
Oh, I heard a story about before you and your brother went off to war, you went hiking on the Appalachians.
Yes, that's right.
And you took freeze-dried food, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Because that was just invented.
Yes. At the time I was working in the Quartermaster Corps in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
And they were just developing freeze-dried foods.
Mm-hmm.
And they were trying to experiment with how they tasted and how much they weighed and what's good and what's not so good. And they had a supply of that came in there along with what wound up by being a concentrated lemonade, better known as battery acid because it's, it's real sour. But I got some of that. Now, back just before we went on to war, off to war, James was about turning 21, and Harold and I were 20. No, wait a minute, Harold had already gone off to war because he'd been in the National Guard. He was back in the war before Pearl Harbor even. And so we decided, let's go camping, and we'll go up on the AT trail, and I could get packs and food and so forth at the Quartermaster Corps.
Mm-hmm.
And so we decided to do that. And my little brother David, I say little brother, he was 12 years old. And as usual, he says, I want to go too. You're too little. No, I want to go, I want to go. And finally, after enough begging and so forth, we said, you're going to have to carry all your equipment. You're going to have to carry all your stuff. You're going to have to keep up with us. Now, remember, we were all 20 and 21 years old. Mm-hmm. And here he's only 12. Well, he wants to go, and he remembers to this day. So we got some maps. We could, of the Appalachian Trail, down at, they had a headquarters where we could get maps and so forth, and it showed where all the springs were and little shelters they had built along there. And so we did. We took the bus from Washington up into Virginia, up on the 18. We got off and started hiking. We had backpacks.
How far did you hike?
Well, now that was the first day we went, I think it was about 15 miles. Largely it was going uphill. Boop, 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 boop. And you had to keep on going because it was 15 miles to the first source of water.
Oh.
And that's, you don't quit before you get to the source of water. And they had the springs all marked out along the map. And you got a source of water, and there's a little lean-to, there's a little cabin there, open it about half the size of the patio, and you could get out of the rain. Didn't have any windows, didn't have any doors. The whole side, one side was all open.
It was just a lean-to?
Sort of like a lean-to. And then the bottom, as I remember, was a grate, so it would never be wet. And that's where we spent the first few nights. We went up there, and my little brother, David, he kept up with us. I'm sure he sweated a whole lot going up there. And we carried all of our food, and we just had water up there. That's the only thing we had. We kept freeze-dried foods and so forth, and then we hiked in different places along that trail for the next 4 or 5 days, and we hiked back and caught the bus home because we all like to camp. David remembers to this day. We had a reunion a while back, and they asked him, "What's the most memorable thing you ever did with your brothers?" He said, "Go camping on the AT." He never forgets that. See, he's 82 now, but the message on this whole thing is, don't underestimate kids just because they may be little, they may be smaller, but so don't underestimate kids, because the concessions you give them, they will always remember. They say, "Well, maybe I didn't deserve to." We could easily have said, "You're too little. We don't want to bother with you. You'd hold us back," and this kind of stuff. And it's easy enough for the kid to say, "No, I won't. I'll be good." But by golly, he was good. He was good. It was only when we were on our way back, he got to not feeling so well, and so. But by then, all the packs were empty and so forth. So. My message is never underestimate doing things with your kids.
How did you hydrate yourself when you were hiking?
We went to the spring.
We had a canteen.
You didn't drink any purified water? It was just water straight from the spring?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, that's all we had.
Okay.
And
Which section of the AT were you on?
Out of where we get off the bus, it's straight west out of Washington. There's a town up there. I forget the name of it right now. I'd know it if I heard it.
Did you go north or south?
We went west.
West.
Straight west.
Okay.
Through Virginia, and up on I forget the name.
The Blue
of that.
Ridge Parkway.
It was. The Blue Ridge Parkway was there, but the AT kind of followed it, not too closely. Sometimes you could be several miles away. The trails seem to, it goes up and down a whole lot more than the highway does.
Well, now, how many days did you hike, and how many miles approximately?
Well, once we stopped off at our shelter, and we were the only ones there. We were the only campers we saw the whole time. We were there, I think about 5 nights, 6 days.
Yeah.
And
about 15 miles a day?
Yes.
So, like approximately 60 miles?
Well, now what we did is we stayed in one, we left our camping gear in one place, and then we would walk up and down the trail to different locations and come back to the same place, so you didn't have to carry your all our sleeping bags.
Ah, smart. So how did you store your, I know you said you had freeze-dried food.
Yes.
Did you have to put any of the food up and away from bears?
No. One thing, we didn't see any bears, and secondly, frozen food doesn't have a smell.
You mean freeze-dried?
Freeze-dried. I said, yeah, not frozen, freeze-dried foods. And they were nothing fancy. I mean, you have anything you can use, like macaroni. See, you just add water. You can have a lot of things like that thing. Macaroni and some other stuff, various things that you can get just out of the grocery store. We didn't carry anything heavy because when you want to carry it, it gets awful heavy.
Right. And you, back in those days, I imagine your pack alone was heavy.
Not okay. It was it was a good it was a, sort of an Army issue, temporary. The Army was rapidly developing equipment. At the time, the Army was still using World War I equipment, backpacks that are made for World War I. And none of these things that had the harness and the frame that you get on packs nowadays.
They're just like normal backpacks?
The old World War I Army packs, packs didn't have any frame to them or anything like that. You just stuffed your tent and your poncho and a few things like that thing, and that was it. See, they didn't carry food with them. They didn't carry all that sort of stuff with them. So the Army was developing that kind of stuff. The quartermaster was charged, and they had a lot of the manufacturers had come in there and submitted different ideas and different equipment and so forth for their consideration. And this is how we had a lot of non-standard samples around there. They got at no cost, and it was no problem to let Lewis take some of them. We did.
You know how you said you got the Distinguished Flying Cross 4 times?
Yeah.
How did you get it for the other 3?
Oh, you want to know everything.
Yeah, I do.
I got it, I don't remember.
Don't remember?
Okay. Some of those were for all of our flights out of there were considered highly hazardous. To begin with, for one thing, we'd fly 500 to 600 miles, and there's no place to set down if you're having a problem. Nothing but dense jungle over hostile land, hostile territory. And if you ever had mechanical problems or you got shot down and there were Japanese Zeros in there, and there was one time we even got strafed by a Japanese bomber, a Betty, but they weren't too much in. They didn't take us down. We managed to get back. But the whole thing was considered over enemy territory. If you went down, you didn't come back. It was just a black spot in the jungle. That's all you see. Plus the fact that, another thing, our navigation systems was unbelievably primitive. Compared to nowadays where you've got radio navigations, you know, when your dad had Omni range and so forth, and he tunes in and so forth, and it gives you a compass and tells him go this way, and you go right to where you set the thing at. We didn't have anything like that. Plus the fact that just about 15 minutes from our field was a big mountain of about 4,000 feet above the field, and if you in the clouds and you set down, you started coming down a little bit too soon, it was crunch. That's all it was, and there was a lot of planes that didn't come back. In fact, it was scary at the moment. At one time, I was scheduled to fly one morning, and I'd come down a couple days before that with a terrible head cold. And because we were unpressurized, and we'd go up and come down, and my whole head was plugged up, and both eardrums broke.
Oh.
And every time I swallowed, my ears would go crunch, crunch, crunch. And so the doctor says, we're going to take you off flying duty for a couple of days and let it clear up a little bit. So they did. They scratched me off, put somebody else on. And that flight never came back.
Oh.
Now that'll make you stop and think, won't it?
Oh, yeah.
It's scheduled to fly, and the guys, we were all very good friends.
Yeah, I bet.
We were all very good friends because we all lived under the same handicaps and so forth. It was, but that's what they did. And we'd lose them. We'd lose guys right along. Sometimes they knew what happened to them, and sometimes they didn't. There was a flight. They made a movie of it. They sent in they airdropped a small group of commandos, if you want to call them that, to take out a Japanese radar station that was down the river a little ways, and they were using that radar to pick us up, and then they'd send a fighter up to shoot us down. And so they dropped in these commanders, and they said, okay, tell you what we'll do. You go in there and you blow up that place, and then they had it all figured out that just after then, there was a vacant rice paddy, and they were going to bring in a C-47. The guys would run off there real quick, jump. A C-47 was timed to come in there and pick them up, and away you go. Hey, that's great. Good idea. And then it'll make it safer for the other planes coming up and down the valley. Well, they did. They went in there. And they took out the radar station, and but then they found out, and then they went back to the field where the rice paddy, where they were going to pick up their C-47, and the C-47 was almost on his final when there was a Japanese patrol that was coming back from recon, and they were all right there at the end of the runway, and they had blown them up. And so they had to call off that the rescue mission. They had to wave them off because they were waiting for them. And so how I got involved in it was so these guys were about 100 miles from home, from where they could get picked up. They were about 100 miles away, and some of the densest jungle that you'll ever find. So what they did, they walked out. That's all they could do. They started out with about 12 guys, and I think there was only about 4 of them that finally made it. And the Japanese were chasing them all the way. And how I knew about it was because we were having to go out there and airdrop them to the strangest places you ever saw. There was, for example, one place there was a small stream running down, and there was a sandbar. And we had to airdrop on a sandbar because this is how we were providing food and water for as they walked out.
Hey, I hate to interrupt the story, but I have 3 minutes left on this video card.
Why don't you just plug it in?
No, on the video card, not the battery.
Oh, I don't
okay.
know.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, let's see. Try and finish the story in 3 minutes.
Okay. Oh, I can finish in 10 seconds. And anyway, this is how we were wondering we were airdropping in these little bitty sandbars. Any little place that's open, maybe only 100 feet wide. Well, you don't find many of them in the jungle unless there's a creek there or something like that thing. And we followed those guys out every day. We'd have to go out and drop to them. And the Japanese were pursuing them. And it was a real touch and go situation. It really happened.
So did those guys make it out that
Yes.
had to hike?
Yes.
Did they hike the full 100 miles?
Yes.
Wow.
But they all didn't make it.
Oh.
They lost some of them.
Malaria?
No, it was. I think a couple of the guys were got wounded, and I think one or two of them got picked off by the Japanese.
Oh.
And but they were having to walk out.
Wow.
Well, wait, why couldn't you pick them up if?
Because the jungle was so dense.
Oh, there wasn't a runway or anything.
No.
So, oh, okay.
No, it wasn't hardly any place to even drop supplies to them.
Oh, okay.
And but we did have radio contract with them, and they had a radar. I mean a radio, and we could pick up their radio probably within. If we got within about 10 miles, we had them pretty well plotted where they were going. They had some little trails through the jungle. Some of those trails are marked on my silk map. And after that situation, that's when they issued us all of that silk map I have. So if we get shot down, it's got all the little trails on there, and creeks and streams and this sort of thing. And so you can find your way out.
Who made those maps? I mean, that's pretty detailed stuff for back in the day.
I don't know. They just showed up and they said, "Here, this is for the this is for the flight crews."
Wow, that's awesome.